Hi, I'm Mary Stewart from Views Digital Marketing. We work with various companies who want to grow and define their online presence. And today I am talking with local Philadelphia bankruptcy attorney Alfred Abel. Alfred began his own law practice in 1982, and he's represented individuals and businesses throughout the Philadelphia and Montgomery County area in cases primarily bankruptcy, business transactions and litigation, and accident cases. Prior to opening his law practice, Alfred ran a family owned business, which he later sold to investors. So he has got firsthand knowledge and experience with the challenges of running a business. Good morning, Alfred.
Good morning. Thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you for coming in virtually. Um, Today, many people are finding themselves unexpectedly struggling financially, but they may be fearful of taking the step to file for bankruptcy. Can you give us an overview of how a typical personal bankruptcy works?
A personal bankruptcy, sure. Um, a personal bankruptcy, there's really two ways they progress. One way to progress is without having a repayment plan. Another way to progress is a bankruptcy that actually does have a repayment plan, and they're very, very different approaches. The one called the Chapter 7 that doesn't have a repayment plan, you kind of disclose to the court through the attorney in most cases what your assets and income are and what your debts are, and you're allowed to keep a certain amount of property. And you get a fresh start. It's called a fresh start bankruptcy or a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And after that disclosure, you keep what you're entitled to keep. Anything that exceeds those limits is available for the creditors to get paid. It takes less than a year in most cases, actually less than 8 months in most cases. And then you get a fresh start, and the creditors can't come after you anymore for the debts that were wiped out. On the other hand, a Chapter 13, which some people are forced into because they have high income or they have a lot of valuable property they want to keep, that has a repayment plan. So instead of lasting less than a year, typically they last between 3 and 5 years, and you'll pay the creditors back anywhere from 0 cents on the dollar to 100 cents on the dollar, but it varies from one case to the next.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, some people may feel that bankruptcy is a sign of failure, although any person or company can have financial problems for reasons that are completely out of their control. What would you say to someone who is worried about the social implications of bankruptcy?
Well, it's a serious issue, and people don't want to file bankruptcy because they feel, guilty, bad, like a failure, like you say. However, putting it off and not filing a bankruptcy doesn't solve that problem because in
Right.
most cases, those people in that situation, as I often say to people in that situation are afraid the bankruptcy will ruin their credit and make them look bad. But if they've got a car repossessed or they got a foreclosure, that problem is already going to be there. It's probably better to address it with a bankruptcy and starting the slate clean and resolving those issues and letting them linger forever. The bankruptcy is just, it doesn't, in most cases, doesn't damage anyone's credit that much. In most cases, their credit's been a problem already.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was actually one of my questions about how it impacts our credit because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'll be ruined forever," but as you say, it's just temporary. And
Well, it's certainly it's during the course of the bankruptcy. It's a problem because it's going to show up. But after the bankruptcy's over, I give my clients a way to rebuild their credit. So I call it my 10-step program. I kind of made it up, but
okay,
it's just a way to a guideline for my clients to rebuild their credit by taking kind of common sense steps about what to do to rebuild their credit. And I've had people come back to me 2 or 3 years later, and they bought a house, they refinanced their mortgage, they bought cars, they're back on track. But you have to follow the steps. If you ignore them, it's of no use whatsoever.
wow, yeah, that's great. 10-step program by Alfred Abel. Okay, well, do you you've dealt with hundreds of bankruptcy cases. So, from what you've seen, what's the most common mistake that people make with a bankruptcy case?
Actually, there are three that people tend to make. Um, Actually, four, but the three big ones are one is they will start depleting their retirement account to try to hold on to the last possible minute, which is a mistake in most that there are in every state. There's some protection for a retirement plan. It varies from state to state, and Pennsylvania happens to be very generous. Um, but if you actually, Pennsylvania is generous in other ways, but the retirement plans are protected 100%. So in Pennsylvania, 100% under federal guidelines. So you could have $1 million in a retirement plan and file bankruptcy, and you still have your retirement plan. If you deplete that by paying bills, you're depleting your retirement account. So one mistake is people deplete their retirement account by taking loans or early withdrawals and paying penalties, not realizing that if that all that it's doing is delaying the inevitable, and they're destroying their retirement plan. That's one mistake. It's a long explanation. I'm sorry
That's
for that.
good. No, it's good.
Another one is people, if they can't pay their first mortgage because it's too big, they'll pay for their car payment or a second mortgage instead, which is really a bigger problem because you're probably better off in most cases paying your first mortgage if you have a first mortgage, or paying your first and second mortgage instead of maybe the car payment or a second car payment, something like that. They kind of pay what they can pay because they feel bad and they want to pay something, so they pay,
Right.
or they pay their credit cards because they can pay the minimum rather than paying their first mortgage because they feel like they're doing the right thing. That's really a mistake because unsecured debt, like credit card debt or medical bills, things like that, that's where you really make progress in a bankruptcy. But the secured debt, like a house or a car, they're going to get paid in most cases. Um, and the third issue I was going to say is they just put it off too long. They put it off and do everything they can to put it off. And these things tend to get worse, not better over time.
All
People
right.
think they can fight their way through it. And some people do, and good for them. But the typical case, it's not going to work.
Well, so do you have any specific advice for people who are considering bankruptcy, but they're not quite sure if it's the right move?
Well, it's self-serving a little bit, but I'd say contact a lawyer. I mean, it's kind of obvious. And read online. There's some good, lots. I mean, now there's tons of good information online. But if the best thing you can do is plan ahead, and most people don't do it because they're fearful. They don't want to file bankruptcy. They're going to fight their way through it, and so on.
Hmm.
But paying some money to an attorney and getting some good advice is probably a better way to go. And planning for it. And when you see these big cases, like we're reading in the paper about all these national retailers who are filing
Right.
bankruptcy, they've been probably planning for a year. And now they got the resources to do it. And this situation is different. But they don't go in there at the last minute and try to figure it out. They've probably figured it out pretty much in advance. If individuals would take that kind of approach, in most cases, they'd be better off.
So even if they were in the situation of just just struggling, then consulting with someone like you who, have experience, you can tell them, okay, you might be able to get out of this doing this and this. Maybe you can give them the 10-step plan,
Sure.
but at least then they have the framework to not make mistakes. Like you can make mistakes leading up to bankruptcy, right? If you're kind of thinking about it,
Mm.
there are things that,
But for example, another example I have is if some people will file their tax returns but not pay their taxes because they haven't got the money to pay. Um, Big mistake, because a tax lien, is going to lien on your property. That's one of those debts that doesn't go away, unlike unsecured debt.
right.
And so that's something somebody might do if they can pay their car note or keep their credit card so they can buy food. They won't pay their taxes. There might be some better way to approach that.
Right. So tax liens are not going to be discharged in a bankruptcy.
They can, but in a very limited set of circumstances. They have to be over 3 years old. There's a whole long list of ways, criteria that have to be met that can wipe out, and you can wipe out tax debt and tax penalties and interest, but it's only a very limited opportunity to do that. Unlike credit card debt or medical bills or loans from friends and family or certain business loans or leases on um, business property, things like that, where they're unsecured, you can wipe them out 100 cents on the dollar sometimes.
Wow. So that's really that would be the goal, like you said,
Yeah.
fresh start, and then start over.
Yes, I mean the Chapter 7 bankruptcy is referred to as a fresh start bankruptcy for consumers. That's exactly what it's there for.
All right. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful to the
Um,
community?
no, the only thing I'd say is some people don't know what bankruptcy they're going to file. It depends somewhat on their income level and how much assets they have. And small business people can actually qualify for a consumer bankruptcy even if they're in business, like a self-employed person, one-man shop, something like that. They don't have to file an expensive Chapter 11 case. In some cases, they can file a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7. Um, but that's really about it. Again, the advice is kind of obvious, and again, it's self-serving. But
Mhm.
contact them to read online, tons of information. But a consultation with somebody who knows what they're talking about can plan and get to a much better result.
Yeah. Great. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving this information. For those of you out there who are listening, if you'd like some more information, you can contact Alfred at the site, which is below, or you can give him a call at the office to get more information or schedule a consultation. So thanks again, Alfred. I really
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Radio.